Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on this Sludge journey and look at a band called Crowbar. And it's interesting, I've been trying to pay attention to some of the subscriber numbers on the bands we've been checking out so far, and Sludge does not appear to be a popular genre, at least not in YouTube's metrics. I probably should look at Spotify for something a little more accurate, but the subscriber numbers on these channels tend to be pretty low, with this one only sitting at 13.8 thousand for Crowbar. I don't know, just something I've observed. We're going to dig into this. It's Crowbars and Suffer as One. Yeah, dude, that's got some groove to it. I really like those moments where we're getting that metric modulation. I think we're just shifting to, yeah, I think we're shifting to dotted notes, and it makes it feel like it's slowing down, but I don't think we actually are. Yeah. We're shifting the length of the notes. We're not actually changing the tempo at all. Very neat. It actually starts a beat early. It starts on beat 4 of the previous bar. Alright, we've moved to a 7. Yeah, I'm really loving that moment. It's so good. Real gritty guitar work. Yeah, they went back to the 7 to finish that track up. Um, Yeah, I mean, once again, though, I'm getting some real heavy rock vibes just with some extra grit to it. I mean, I'd even say that this kind of reminds me of, is it Pantera that I'm thinking of? I think so. And is Pantera sludge metal? I do feel like this is just a bit grittier than what I think of when I think of Pantera. Pantera tends to have um, a cleaner production to it. Not that it's a clean production, just cleaner than what we've heard right here. This one just has a little bit more grit, a little bit more bite, some more compression and distortion on top of it all. That makes it feel, I mean, once again, kind of like going back to how I saw black metal as more of a production element than a musical one. I kind of feel like that's the same thing with sludge metal here, where it's it's more about the way that the composition is being presented production wise, more so than the notes themselves. Um, and unless I'm just not getting a very large picture of sludge metal. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm sitting on this. It feels like radio rock with more bite, or I should say hard rock, heavy rock, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. Heavy rock with more bite. We talked about this yesterday when I was bringing up Alice in Chains and Godsmack, I think it was, and how I felt those influences in music. Once again, I feel a heavy Pantera element here, something that I would have heard on the radio, something like Walk. Very popular, very strong radio song, just with more grit on top of it. It's edgier. It's got just a little bit more compression and distortion to it. In fact, I think this song more than any of the other ones we've listened to would fit very well on radio. I don't think that this would have much pushback. If you put this on the radio, first of all, I think some people would probably confuse it for either a B-side Pantera track or something new from the group. But I think it would fit right in. I don't see this being an issue. Unlike some of the other stuff we've checked out, which due to their length or just due to the vocal style or even due to some of the musical components, made it less palatable for a mainstream audience. I don't know. This one I feel like it fits right in. And if you had told me, you asked me off the street, hey, what genre do you think this is? I mean, sludge would not have been the first thing I thought of, even if I had heard the term in passing. It's just not where I would place this. So, like I said, unless I'm getting a very skewed perspective of what sludge has to offer, I think I'm getting a very clear picture of it, and it's more of a production thing with a specific style of music, much like black metal was. So let's talk about some of the stuff they got going on in here. First of all, for some reason, the vocalist sounded exactly like I expected. I don't know, just based off of the album art, I was kind of expecting a grittier, kind of compressed clean, like a yell, and just it was exactly what I was expecting. Again, I don't know why. I don't know why the album art made me think that, but it's sort of one note. It's not monotonous, but it sits within like the same 2 or 3 note range. There isn't a lot of inflection that changes. There is one note, I think, where he kind of pushes up maybe about half an octave and goes into a bit more of a fry scream rather than the yell that he has, that compressed clean that he utilized most of it. But other than like the 2 moments that he kind of went into that fry moment, that Fry style, he just kind of stuck around with this compressed clean for a majority of the track and didn't really change up the range either. Verse, chorus, the bridge was all guitar work. I mean, it was all pretty much the same vibe from the vocalist. And the same thing could be said for actually all of it, the guitar and the drum work. We had riff and drum pattern changes and metric changes when we look at the way that the not metric changes, tempo, perceived tempo shifts. the modulation from the chorus. There were aspects which certainly separate all of these sections of the song, but for the most part, they all just kind of, at least for me, kind of bleed together into very samey atmosphere, same energy, same emotion. There isn't a lot of changes between them. It's more of just the underlying notes that get changed, which, I mean, that works well for what they're aiming for. There's a lot of bands that do that. There isn't a lot of contrast between the sections. It's more just about changing things up for the sake of changing it up sometimes. Just following the ABABCB pattern because that's what we do. But there's this lethargy to this entire song. This weight, this heaviness to it. It really doesn't feel like it wants to move forward too much. It just kind of wants to stay where it's at. The vocals, there's not even a lot of I don't want to say energy because there's a lot of energy, but there's not a lot of momentum. There's definitely a lot of energy being put into them. They sound loud, they sound big, but they don't really feel like they're going anywhere. If we were to visualize this into speech, it would be like just talking in circles, right? Not really having too much of a direction, not really having much of a reason, but just finding ways to continue to talk. And that's kind of what the vocals, actually everything just kind of sounds like to me. It's sludgy. It just feels like it's wanting to stay where it is. Right, there's not a lot of need to move forward, to progress. And that kind of ties into how the song progresses, even in that there isn't a lot of change between the verse and the chorus, other than some note changes. They change up the riff, they change up the drum pattern a little bit, but it's not like it's a huge overhaul to reevaluate the song or to contrast with anything else. It's all very single-minded of just kind of sitting where it's in. There's no point in exploring another atmosphere or another emotion because we're fine where we're at. Why move forward like that? Why go in another direction? This is working. And that's the vibe for the whole song. It's we could be moving forward, we could go to the next idea, we could change things up, but honestly, things aren't that bad where we're at, so let's stick to it. And we can hear this in the drum pattern. It's kind of laid back. We can hear it in the speed of notes that we get out of the guitars, or sort of the lack thereof. Same thing with the vocals. There's just not a lot of urgency. That's the word I want. There's not a lot of urgency in a lot of these melodic lines, or even the drum pattern. It's completely content with being where it's at. There's not a huge sense of drive to progress. And we can even hear that in the chorus taken to the next level, where every other bar has this moment where it just feels like it's dragging on. And I mentioned, I thought this part was phenomenal. I first approached it thinking it was a retardando, or maybe just an extended full bar fermata. And then I was like, oh, maybe it's just a different tempo. We shift tempo every bar. And I'm like, well, that's not great. Who would do that? I mean, it's possible. It's not like it's impossible to write a new tempo on every bar. It's just not neat as far as written music goes. So I really started to count it out, and we don't change the tempo or the time signature, so it's a modulation being done with the music. And like I said, I think it's done with switching from quarter notes to dotted quarter notes. And a dot at the end of a note signifies that you need to play an extra half of its length. So in 4/4, a quarter note gets a beat. That's what the 4/4 means. 4 beats per bar, and each beat is a quarter note. That's where the bottom 4 comes from. The top one tells you how many beats are in a bar. So 4 beats per bar, and a quarter note gets the beats. So each beat is going to be a quarter note. And half of a quarter note is an eighth note. So if our quarter notes on the beat, bop, 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 our eighth notes are going to be half of that. Bop, 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 bop. So basically, instead of playing every beat, we're going to play every beat in a half. We're going to, a dotted quarter note would be a quarter note plus an eighth note together, the length of those. So 1.5 beats. That's all the dot tells you. It tells you to add an extra half of the length. And what that does is it makes it feels like it's slowing down because we still have this rigid time here, right? We're not actually, the notes aren't changing in length, right? Before this, all our notes were the same length, and now all our notes are still the same length, but there's more space between them. So it feels naturally to us that time has slowed down, but actually we're just playing less frequently. And the other thing that kind of throws it off a little bit is that this slowing down concept actually starts on beat 4 of the previous bar. So it feels like we have 5 beats worth of slowing down. And we're like, well, we don't have 5 beats in a bar. You know, obviously we slowed down naturally. We slowed the tempo down. This is actually 4 beats, you know, but no, we started a beat early, which gives it an elongated section to feel like we've slowed down. It's actually a really genius way to do it. I don't know if it's exactly on the 4 before or if it's like the and of 4 before, but it definitely starts before the downbeat of beat 1 of the new bar. And it's just a really ingenious way to go about doing this. It gives them more space, which they already need more space because they're playing less often, and it allows it to feel like it's still 4/4 in a slower tempo, but we actually didn't change the tempo. We just did a little bit of a sonic illusion and made the bar feel like it started early when it didn't. Well, I mean, it did start early, but it feels like we're starting on the downbeat of the next bar when we actually haven't. Yeah, it's just a really, really great illusion that they have going on there. And once you see through it, the magic is still there, which I think it's not something that happens too often. I knew that we started a beat early on it. I knew that we were doing probably dotted notes, if not maybe some sort of a triplet idea with like triplet half notes or something. Anyways, it's definitely something in that area of using longer notes and starting a little bit early to get this effect. But even though I knew what they were doing, every time I heard it, it still felt like we were dragging. It felt like the tempo just drops. And like I said, that's a bit unusual. Once you know how the magic trick works, usually the magic trick is no longer entertaining. You know, you might have an appreciation for it, but the wonder is gone. That wow, you know, that wow factor of seeing the magic trick. And here it didn't. You know, I knew what was going on and it was still caught me off guard every time. It's a really great illusion that they have going on there. But yeah, got on that whole tangent. I mean, it's easily the highlight of the song for me. There's a reason that it's probably going to be the longest part of this analysis. But you know, we get out of the verse and we get into the chorus, and the huge main thing right here is this modulation that we hear. But I love how it's also worked into the way that the vocals go. The vocals, the drums, the guitars, they all sort of play into it, which also helps with the feeling that it's slowing down rather than some sort of modulation. And I think it just works really well with the flow of the vocals, though. Previously, you know, I mentioned that there really wasn't much to the vocals. In the verse, they just kind of exist. They all kind of sit around, all the notes kind of sit around the same place. There's not a lot of contrast in the vocal delivery. And here, I think this is the missing piece right here, in that we have this back and forth of rhythmic components to that lead melody. And I think that the chorus just, to me, it's the highlight of the song. It shows a lot of the aspects of the track that I think can help showcase the contrasting elements that they have available to them. It shows that they can achieve this single vibe and showcase it in a variety of different ways. And I really appreciate that, because if the song was just that same sort of one note style that we saw in the verse, I don't know that I would have enjoyed it so much. It really is some of these elements that come in and present the contrasting concepts that help the song flow. It gives it a nice ebb and flow to it. Now, speaking of ebb and flow, though, we can't disregard one of the first things that hooked me, and that's the groove. This song is so groovy. I don't know what it is. It's a very rigid song, and in the past I've talked about groove as typically being something that's a bit looser with the rhythmic component. I typically don't find a lot of groove in rigid ideas. Syncopation is usually something that I chalk up to being a strong component of whatever we're talking about, grooviness. A couple of people in the comments like, I find rigid rhythms groovy, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. And I think that there's a couple of ideas a couple of musical ideas that I've heard. And I'm like, man, that's rigid, but I'm really getting into it. It makes me want to move my body, and this is one of those. And I've yet to find. I need to just collect a lot of these and figure out what the common thread is between them of how they're rigid but still groovy. And maybe that can help me better define what groove is, because last time we checked it out, or last time I tried to define it, I have a real hard time. I think groove is a difficult thing to define anyways, especially think part of me believes it's fairly subjective to begin with, but yeah, it's not something I have an easy time defining to begin with, and now I have counter examples. So my old definition isn't accurate even for me anymore. But yeah, there's something super groovy here, and I love it. It just made me want to move my body every moment, whether it was the verse or the chorus. Just something about it. Even with the illusion of time slowing down, it still made me, I still wanted to move with it. We hit the 7 section that we'll talk about in a second, when we moved to 7/4, and I still wanted to move my body, albeit in more of a larger idea where it doesn't necessarily line up exactly with what the band's doing, but still, it made me want to move my body. There's something super groovy about this track, despite it being rigid, and I'm curious in what that is. But yeah, just the song grabbed me right from the start with that, and I enjoyed it. And then we got one more, well, technically 2 more sections to talk about. I guess it's just one. The bridge, right? It's kind of got a guitar solo section where there isn't any melody except what the guitars are doing, but it really wasn't a strong melodic component that I would call it a solo. But this was the section where we ran into the 7/4 idea. And as I just mentioned, the top number in a time signature is going to tell you how many beats are in a bar, and the bottom number tells you how long of a note gets the beat. So much like in our 4/4, each beat is going to be a quarter note, but instead of 4 bars per beat, we're going to have 7. And this was typically broken up into groupings of 4 and 3. If you listen to where the melodic component took breaths, or I guess another way to say that is when it felt like it repeated, right? The way that I typically counted this when I listened to it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, with heavy emphasis on the 1. So if we were counting this in 7, that would be beat 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. And the 1 and the 5 have a lot of emphasis on them. And if I remember correctly, it was almost like a soft reset of the melodic flow even on this beat 5, which is why I could also compartmentalize them into a 4 and a 3. And it's very possible that maybe in their mind, or if they wrote it down on sheet music, that instead of writing in 7/4, they alternated bars of 4/4 and 3/4. Regardless, we have a 7-beat phrase where the quarter notes get the beat. And the cool thing is if you follow along with the snare, which is hitting the backbeats, beats 2 and 4. And you follow that along and you move your body to that, or you headbang to that, or whatever you want to do to get into the groove. When we reset, you're actually going to be off from that. You're going to be moving your body on 1 and 3 while the snare hits 2 and 4. But on the second repetition, which will be beat 15, you'll line right back up. It's one of the cool things about odd time signatures. As long as you can feel that internal groove, you might feel off with what they're playing, but you'll line back up eventually. And that's what I meant earlier when I said that I wanted to move my body, even if it wasn't always with what they were doing. I was looking at it on a larger level, and you can just feel the pulse, even if they're not emphasizing it, so that when they do emphasize it, you'll return and sync back up with them. It is phenomenal. Not anything specifically they're doing. That's not about the music. That's about how I heard it. But I really like odd time signatures like that, where they lean into the heavy repetition and allows you to get out of sync and then get back in sync. And when you get back in sync, feels good. So yeah, that's what they were doing there, though. That 7-beat phrase. And again, not really changing anything up. The vibe, the atmosphere, the tone, the sound of it all is very similar to everything else we had. Interestingly, I was checking into the production, where instruments were, how things sounded, and we had 2 guitars, left and right, and they were not copy pasted. I don't know when this song came out. I don't. Oh, maybe 98. Well, it says either 98 or 03. That's kind of where I'm sitting on this. But it's definitely 2 guitars playing the same line. You can hear minor discrepancies between the 2 sides, but for the most part, they're playing the exact same thing, which really gives it this powerful force from the outside. And then you hear the bass, the vocals, and the drums coming center. And once again, just like looking at some of the other bands this week, everything is very tightly compressed. Everything's tightly placed. Everything's close to the listener's ears. There's not a lot of use of the extra room around the sound sphere. It's very compressed and compact, which fits in line with everything else we've listened to this week. Having these really compressed production styles and making the song feel more aggressive because it's so close to the listener. It's not something that I think many people pick up on when they listen to just music like this, but if you listen to electronic music or pop music and use that as a palate cleanser and then come back to something like this immediately, I think it's real easy to hear the difference when you have that stark contrast immediately set up next to each other. And, once again, though, it's all about bringing it together and keeping this aggressive sound. Everything is super loud, super fuzzy, it's distorted, it feels like it's so loud that it's clipping, and that loudness brings about an aggression that is right in your face. And it works, right? It's a perfect way of aligning the sound of the music and placing that spatially where you can get maximum effort out of it. If you had all of this loudness, but it felt like it was so far away from you, it wouldn't really have that same impact. So the production here, everything works together to deliver the specific experience that they want you to have while listening to it. And I think that covers pretty much everything. Like I said, there wasn't really a lot of changes throughout the song. You talk about one section and you've pretty much talked about them all. So I guess let's dive into the lyrics here and see what's going on. Oh, very short. Following your head might be a long, long road to nowhere. Don't dwell on the past. You've got to fight the strength to lead you. Or you got to find the strength to lead you, which is interesting. I mentioned that the feeling of the song is about standing still where you are, and the very first stanza says you have to find the strength to move forward. Hear my words now, suffer with me, drown in despair, set yourself free. That's the chorus, I think. The second verse says, underneath your skin, is there enough to keep you breathing? I drew my own blood, another life through this transfusion. And then a third verse, which I don't remember there being a third verse. Maybe this was in the bridge somewhere. Born again in time, you're not alone in what you're feeling. I'm not sure. Right off the start, I thought this might have been a motivational song, right? Don't dwell on the past, find the strength to move forward. But the chorus says, suffer with me and drown in despair. Set yourself free. And this is also the part where we get uh, the slowdown effect in the music. And I wonder if maybe like the verse is supposed to be the positive something. It could be an external force, maybe somebody trying to help you get out of a tough time, help you take that step forward, or it could just be positive thoughts. Whereas the chorus is some sort of negative component. You could go on and, don't dwell about the past. You could try to find ways to take a step forward, but how about you listen to me? Suffer with me, drown in your despair, set yourself free. You know, I'm giving you the path to salvation. You don't need strength for this. Just let yourself go and let the despair, envelop you. And then we get back to the verse. It says, underneath your skin, is there enough to keep you breathing? Do you have enough will to live? Your body might keep going, but do you have the will to keep going? You got to find that. It says, I drew my own blood another life through this transfusion. I don't, that's a confusing line right there. I drew my own blood another life through, I don't know. And then born again in time, you're not alone in what you're feeling. Again, this is the positive voice. You know, find a way to press forward. You're not alone in what you're feeling. I'm not sure about the born again in time, but you're not alone in what you're feeling. There's other people like you. We can help you take that step forward. Don't forget that you're not alone in this fight. And this could be, I'm going to assume that the second verse is also a positive element. Like I said, there's a thing, do you have enough willpower to keep going? You need to find whatever that is to keep you going. I'm not sure about the transfusion line, but it seems that the verses are about telling somebody how they can push forward or reminding them that they need to push forward and get out of the past. And the chorus is saying, hey, it's not so bad. Think about the past. Get all depressed. It's fine. Just let yourself be free. Don't worry about trying to take steps forward. And it's the contrast going back and forth between this. And it could be a variety of things. It could be uh, you know, could be something like your AA group versus your drinking buddies. Maybe they're not real great friends and they just want you to go out and party. Or it could be about battling depression, and the other one is your psychiatrist or your friends who are trying to help you through it or whatever. Like it could be anything. This could be about drug abuse. This could be about hard times in the past. It could be about the current situation that you're in just isn't great and you're having a hard time taking that step forward. It could be about anything. But I think that the core message here is that it's easy to let yourself drown in despair, but that you need to find some way to keep going. You need to take that step forward to not dwell on the past. Um, but oh, this says 98. So, okay. I got I got the release year now. Um, yeah, again, I think that this is just a song where lyrically there's a little bit of cohesion between the lyrical and musical themes here about slowing down, especially with the verse, or sorry, the chorus feeling like it's dragging, and this is also the negative element trying to tell you to let yourself be, drown in the despair. But aside from that, the overall atmosphere and vibe of the song, just the aggression of it, just it's the style of music that they play more so than something that lines up particularly well with the vocals. I mean, the lyrics, or at least that's how it feels to me. But those are just my thoughts on Crowbars and Suffer as One. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one, if you enjoyed it or not, anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add or correct me on. Go ahead and toss those down there. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree, which takes you to this joint right here. You go check it out. It's a menu. It's got everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, join the Patreon, vote on future themes and tracks. You can submit your own special selection. Just a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check that out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for this one. We also have a special selection coming out. If you're watching this as soon as it was posted, the special selection came out 6 minutes ago. We're going to be looking at something interesting, I think. Keep you in the dark on that one, though. Go ahead and check that out, though, if you're curious. Otherwise, be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. We'll look at our final Sludge song for the week and our creator request. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.